Guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca. Today I'm going to be sharing quite a few different recipes with you. These are super fun, warm and cozy recipes for winter, fall. Honestly, I love anything hot, like a hot soup. I'll eat that all year round. If you're anything like me, then cookbooks stress you out. So we found a recipe on a blog post, and then my husband and I found quite a few actually on TikTok. If you see recipes in a video and it like speaks to you, it's so much easier for me to understand sometimes. I feel like a never-ending list of recipes and then directions is just like not my style. So anyways, to get on into it, the first one is going to be a creamy Parmesan Italian sausage soup. I kind of wing this one. I'll leave all of the recipes and any of the original creators, whether it's their website or a TikTok post, I'll leave all of that information down below. These are not my recipes, but if they made it to this video, then that means they were an absolute hit and they've been on rotation for the last month or two. This one is so simple, and honestly I feel like we had everything on hand besides some Parmesan. So I'm gonna take an entire package of the Italian sausage. I kind of skimmed with it. I only used like 3 or 4. I would highly recommend to use the entire package. The flavor is unmatched. We're gonna start with a large saucepan or skillet, whatever you prefer to cook in. Heat it up on medium heat with a ton of olive oil, basically just enough to coat the bottom of the pan, and then you're gonna cook the Italian sausage through. This took maybe like 5 or 6 minutes, depending on how you like your meat cooked through. I like to mince it as fine as I can, and then you're gonna go ahead and add your garlic. Recipe calls for 2 garlic cloves. Use what you have on hand. I had the minced jar garlic or lazy garlic, however you want to say it. I used 2 small spoons of garlic. Measure with your heart, measure with what feels right, whatever is right for your home. You're going to add that in, and then at that time you would also add in a diced onion. You can use a small onion. We actually don't eat onions in our house. Nobody likes them but me. Let me know down below if you cook with onions. I adore the aroma and the smell. You would sweat it down basically until it's translucent, and then you're gonna add a can of diced tomatoes, and then you're also gonna add in your chicken broth. I had bone broth and we had some on hand, so I was like, you know what, this will go great. And then you'll add all of your seasonings, and you're gonna let that simmer. And this is where I kind of winged it. That's what I love about recipes. Tailor them to your home. You do not have to use potatoes. The recipe does not call for this, but I had a ton of these on hand from Costco, so I was like, you know what, we're gonna do a play on the ZUPPA Toscana and the Italian sausage. It's a creamy Parmesan soup is what this recipe is, so I just kind of made it my own. And honestly, I love the addition of potatoes in soup. It's one of my favorites. And so I just diced those really fine, really thin, so they'd cook super quickly. This soup was ready within like 30 minutes. I love it. And then I had some fresh kale, did a rough chop. I also had a helper on my hip with me. Found some bacon crumbles in the fridge and was like, you know what, we're gonna throw those in there as well. Did a super quick the express loaf on our bread machine. I'll link it down below. It's by far my favorite. I've been through 3. This one is my absolute favorite. My potatoes were 10. If you're skipping over the potato, at this point your soup has been brought to a boil, and at this time you're going to stir in your heavy cream, grated Parmesan cheese, and any Italian seasonings. Go as heavy or as light as you wish. The recipe calls for about a cup. I would honestly maybe do 1.5 cups to 2 cups, depending on how creamy or how thick you want your soup. And don't forget, if you ever want your soup to be a little thicker, or if you're making like a roast, a slurry, anything like that, you can always just do cornstarch and water equal parts and add it, and make sure you whisk it in enough to get a little bit thicker. So this soup was amazing. It was super simple, really easy. I feel like most of the items are relatively inexpensive, so it's a super budget friendly option, especially if you're making a side like bread. You can add rice in here to beef it up. There's so many different things you can add that come out of your pantry, which is what I like. The base recipe, I love to find a really good recipe, but then I can tweak it and make it my own according to my family's taste, or winter, summer, you name it. It's really colorful. It adds a lot of flavor, and honestly, it's definitely in our recipe box for one that we're going to use throughout the year. So let me know down below if you would try this one. Here's how the soup came out. We had a bunch of rolls left over, so we ate those first, and then of course the bread only made it through the night. It was delicious. I would again use all of the Italian sausage. In the beginning, it seemed like a lot to use the entire package, fridge, but the second night, FYI, this reheats beautifully. So I feel like this would be a really good freezer prep meal. I reheated it the second night and I just browned the 2 extra sausages and the flavor was on point. It was a gorgeous soup, and I feel like the star of the show is either spinach or kale, whatever you find in your store. Don't be afraid to play around with recipes and different things that are in season. It's okay to substitute things. And here it is again. This is one of my new favorite soups because it's super simple and it's very light. This next recipe is something that I just came up with. I had a ton of extra ingredients and I was like, you know what, we're gonna do a breakfast scramble. So I had a tomato, a jalapeno that was actually gonna go bad. I diced them up really fine. I boiled my potatoes. I had 1 extra sausage, a ton of kale that was rough chopped, and I was like, let's see what we can throw together. So I browned the Italian sausage, and Italian sausage is so flavorful. Obviously, if I was making this for my family, I'd probably use like 4 or 5 sausages, but I was just literally throwing something together for breakfast. I boiled the potatoes first just because I honestly didn't want to wait for them to brown in the skillet. I topped them with the Kinder's, I think it's the salt, pepper, and garlic seasoning, and then I sprinkled in a ton of jalapeno and a ton of tomato, and I basically just let that cook down as much as I wanted. And I used the rest of the fresh Parmesan. You can use whatever you have on hand, use any cheese, throw that in there, and I actually ended up topping it off with way more cheese on top of it. You could throw an egg in here. You could meal prep this for the week if you make it in batches. It was so good, and honestly, it was so simple. These are the things that I feel like sometimes I forget when it comes to super simple meals. Sometimes it's literally just throw it in the pot and here you go. It was really good. I actually tried this with a corn tortilla. It would be great as a breakfast wrap. Do this as a meatless option with mushrooms, peppers, beans, you name it. Sometimes I feel like scrambles are often overlooked, but are the easiest thing to throw together when you're in a pinch and you have a ton of random leftover items. Now we're getting into my all-time favorite soup. This is definitely on repeat. This is something that we've made quite a few times and I love this soup. It's basically a lasagna soup, but it is so rich and decadent. One of those ones you're gonna have to trust the process. So I used, I believe it was an 80-20 or a 90-10. Use whatever ground beef you have on hand. And again, Italian sausage, we were eating that like left and right this week. So I used half of a pound of ground beef and then I browned half of the Italian sausage packet. I would use, again, probably a little bit more of the Italian sausage. You want that flavor in there, and I was going a little skimpy, but I realized with the other recipe that I should have used more. So you can use half and half, use half a pound or use a pound, just kind of gauge based on the size of your family or who you're feeding. Brown that, season with salt and pepper, again, heaping tablespoons of garlic. Everything will be linked down below. A ton of Italian seasoning. I am super heavy-handed with seasoning, so I oftentimes do not measure, even if there is measuring on the recipe. I will just kind of go with the flow. So I'm going to throw this together. You're going to brown it, let it season with the garlic, soak up any of the extra fat that you don't want lying around in your soup. I was using bone broth, so I was like, you know what, this is going to be a very heavy soup, so soak up as much as you can. Make a well in the middle of the ground beef and your Italian sausage mixture, and then you're going to put some tomato paste in there. Use the tube, use the can, whatever you have on hand. It does call to let the tomato paste to sit undisturbed for about a minute in the middle of the pan, and then go ahead and mix that into the mixture of the ground beef, the garlic, and then the Italian sausage. Mix it around for about 2 minutes until it becomes fragrant. You're going to use a jar of your favorite tomato sauce, and if you're not rinsing out the bottom of your jars, what are you doing? Because you're leaving so much sauce in there. I recycle all these jars anyways. I use them for plants, I use them for everything, organizing, you name it. So always rinse out the bottom, shake it out, and get everything that you need, especially if you're making soup. It's just, you're going to end up adding water anyways. You're going to let that boil. You're going to grab your lasagna. You're going to break the lasagna noodles into small pieces. You're going to see the pieces that I broke them into here, and save yourself the time and try to get them a little bit smaller, not as wide. It's kind of a wonky noodle to eat if you're eating soup, and you get this super chunky lasagna noodle, especially if you have little ones. You're going to let those simmer or boil for about 10 minutes. Check your noodles. Everybody's stove temperature is going to be different. While those are boiling, we're going to prep this beautiful ricotta mixture. This is one of those like trust the process, because you're like, what am I doing? This is chunky. It's going to be nasty. But you're going to mix the ricotta, the fresh Parmesan, and I promise you the fresh Parmesan makes the difference, and mozzarella. You're going to finely chop some fresh Italian parsley. finely chop, mince it however you decide. You can even use dried, it's going to be all the same. And I will mix that in together, and then we're going to end up dropping these in to the soup in dollops, and I'll show you that here in a second. I definitely taste tested this before I dropped it in, and it was so good. I actually added quite a bit of pepper because it was a little bit salty. You can see here this color is gorgeous, just like this. Honestly, this soup would be so good, but if you add everything else together, it just becomes so incredibly rich and flavorful. I'm going to go ahead and drop in the heavy whipping cream. You can gauge this to whatever flavor profile, so I would say start with what the recipe calls for. Again, that's in the description box. If I remember, I'll throw it back up here. And then if you feel like you need more, you can obviously add more as you go, but start small. And then we're going to start dropping in heaping dollops of that ricotta mixture into the soup. And when I tell you that this combines together, oh my gosh, it's absolutely amazing. Even my kids ate this. Save a little bit of that mixture that you made the dollops in slowly, maybe do like 1 or 2 at a time, stir it in and actually let it marinate for a while. And then you're going to let this simmer on low for about 5 to 10 minutes after you've dropped the ricotta mixture in. Again, that fresh mixture that you saved, save a little bit of it and serve that right on top of each bowl of soup with a little bit of fresh parsley. I had homemade bread again, and when I tell you, I wish I had doubled this recipe. That's how delicious this was. You are going to be so sad as to why you've never made this before. I adore this soup, and I will make this year round. I really hope that if you try any of these recipes, that this is the one you try, because I promise when you make it, it will definitely be in your mind. My husband's like, when are we making it again? It's so good. It's really thick. It's very creamy, but it is a soup that is just like a warm hug on a really cold day. Last recipe is not a soup recipe, but it is definitely one of those mom win dinners. This is dinner in under 30 minutes in one pan. So you're gonna grab some cumin, garlic pepper, red pepper. I believe the recipe calls for paprika, salt, and pepper. Use whatever chicken you have on hand. Yet again, I had chicken thighs, so I cut it up as best I could, took out the bone, took off any of the extra skin or fat. Use chicken breast, whatever you have. You're going to brown the chicken in your pan, season it to your liking, and then add in a can of Rotel. I had diced tomatoes with jalapenos, so I threw that in there. And then I made some tomato sauce with just tomato paste and water. Add in a can of chicken stock. You can use bouillon powder, bouillon cubes, you name it. About 1.5 cups, and then you're going to add 1 cup of rice to the pan, and you're going to let this simmer on low. I would say for about 20 to 25 minutes. Everybody's stove temperature, the temperature at which your skillet's going to heat up with your rice, it's all going to vary, so just to let it go low and slow is the best way. While your rice and chicken is cooking, chop up any fresh veggies you have. You don't have to add any of this. It's delicious, let me tell you, by itself, but I always offer some sort of like tomatoes, lettuce, cilantro, anything like that on the side with shredded cheese. I feel like it makes it a little bit more visually interesting by itself. You can eat this with tortillas, with chips. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know which recipe you're excited to try. I hope you stick around. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video or if you got anything out of this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Here are a few videos I think you might like.